Hello and welcome to Create and Play, Hull Truck Theatre's homeschooling drama lessons for children aged 4 to 7. My name is Finn. For this session you will need some paper, some colouring in pens or pencils, and you. This is the story of Hansel and Gretel. You might know it, but this is our version of the story. You can join in if you like, by doing the sound effects or imagining you're the characters of the story and acting out what they say or do. And if there are any other homeschoolers with you, you might like to help them join in too. Once, long ago, there lived a boy and a girl. A boy called Hansel and a girl called Gretel. And they were brother and sister. They lived with their father and their stepmother in a tiny house in the deep, dark forest. And they lived happily there until one day. One morning, when the family went out to find food, they were horrified to discover that there was no food left to eat anywhere. It was as if a curse had been laid upon the land. And this was the same day after day. That night, they went to bed with their tummies rumbling. And soon, their stepmother grew sick and took to her bed. They were in big trouble. What might it be like inside this tiny house in the deep dark woods? If you could peek in through the window, what might you see? I'm going to give you 5 minutes to draw what you might see in Hansel and Gretel's house. Grab your paper and your colouring in pens or pencils and let's get to work. Are you ready? Great. Off we go. What can you see in Hansel and Gretel's house? Are there chairs? Is there a table? Can you see the kitchen? What colour are the walls? Can you see Hansel and Gretel's bedroom? You've got 4 minutes left. What do they have in their bedroom? What does Hansel look like? What does Gretel look like? What clothes are they wearing? Are they warm or are they cold? Three minutes to go. There isn't any food in the kitchen, is there? What does their father look like? I wonder what their stepmother looks like. Is their stepmother tucked up in bed resting? Just 2 minutes. How do they feel about not having any food? I wonder what they're doing in the house. I wonder what they're doing in the house. One more minute. If you haven't already, let's add some colour to this picture. What colours are in the house? Last few seconds. Get ready to show me your pictures. Right then, let's see what you've done. Show me. One evening, Father sat by the fire, worrying about how to get food. They only had one crust of bread left, and stepmother was getting worse. Father couldn't go out of the house to find food. He had no energy and he needed to stay and look after stepmother. Hansel and Gretel stepped up to the task. They said they'd go over to the other side of the forest to search for food. Father didn't want them to go, but he had no choice. He made them promise to look after each other. The next day, Hansel and Gretel got up early and they got dressed. Right, I need your help. Let's pretend we're Hansel and Gretel and we're getting into our warmest clothes, ready for our big adventure. Are you ready? Copy me and make the sounds. Here we go. First, they got into their warm winter coats. Put one arm in and the other and hutch it onto your back. Good. Then they did up their zips. Zip. Then they put on their scarves. And finally, they put on their hat. Whoop. Great. Father broke the bread in two, and Hansel and Gretel popped it in their pockets for later. They crept out of the house quietly, so not to wake their stepmother up, and they were off on their journey. As they were walking, Hansel kept looking back over his shoulder to look at their house. And as they walked, their house got smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually it disappeared into the dark canopy of the trees. As Hansel and Gretel walked and walked and walked and walked, they got more tired and more hungry until they had to stop. Let's go back over that bit of the story again. I want you to be Hansel and Gretel walking. So, up on your feet. Choose whether you're going to be Hansel or Gretel, and I want you to walk and get more tired and more hungry as we go along. Ready? Here we go. Hansel and Gretel walked and walked and walked and walked until they were so tired and so hungry that they had to stop. Great work, everybody. So, Hansel and Gretel sat down in the leaves. Gretel took out her crust of bread and began to eat it. Hansel had none, because on his long walk through the woods, he'd been eating his crust. Eventually, they fell asleep in the cold, huddled together for warmth. The next morning, when they awoke, they saw that the forest had been shrouded in thick fog. More leaves had fallen on the floor, and it covered the path they had followed back to their home. They were lost. But then Gretel spotted high up in a tree a bird, the most beautiful bird she'd ever seen. And so they decided to follow it. Deeper and deeper they followed the bird into the woods until they came across a cottage. And this cottage wasn't any old cottage. It wasn't made of wood or stone. It was made of gingerbread and sweet treats. Hansel and Gretel were so hungry that they just couldn't help themselves, so they reached out and grabbed a chocolate button from around the windowsill and stuck it in their mouth. Oh, it tasted so good. There were lollipops stuck to the walls and sparkling lemon drops on the roof. Soft, creamy stuff up there too. I want you to become Hansel and Gretel with me. Jump up on your feet. Let's imagine that you are Hansel and Gretel and you are starving. And you come across this sweet treat gingerbread cottage and you want to eat everything on it. Are you ready? Great. Do it with me. Hansel and Gretel reached out their hands and pulled a chunk of cake off the wall. Oh, it tastes so good. And then they grabbed a sherbet lemon from underneath the windowsill. Oh, that tastes so good. And then they cracked some biscuit from over here. And maybe some treacle from here. Scoop it up. It's all stuck between my fingers. And maybe a lollipop over here. Mine's a green flavour. What's yours? Until they heard something. Hansel and Gretel stopped dead in their tracks and listened. What was that? Hansel and Gretel both thought they heard a voice. Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who's that gnawing on my house? And then they heard it again. Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who's that gnawing on my house? Hansel and Gretel were still. And then the door of the cottage creaked open. And out stepped a charming woman with a kind, smiling face. And she offered for them to come in and warm themselves with a hot chocolate and some cookies. After Hansel and Gretel had eaten more than they had ever eaten in their whole lives, they went to sleep in two little tiny beds made up of candy floss covers and the squishiest, softest marshmallow pillows. The next morning, The woman woke the children up with a cheery, "Wake up, sleepyheads, there's plenty of work to do." And she set them to work, cooking and cleaning the whole house. Right, everyone, I want you to become Hansel and Gretel with me. We're going to do the chores that the cheery woman made them do. Are you ready? Copy me and make the sounds too. All right, are you ready? Let's go. First, they scrubbed the floors. Then they dusted from high to low. La-dee-dee, la-dee-da. Then they chopped the wood. Swept the chimney. Polished the furniture. Washed the dishes. Splish, splash, splish, splash, splish, splash, splish, splash, and cleaned the toilet. And they worked so hard and for so long that they fell fast asleep. The next day, they were woken up with the cheery woman saying, "Wakey, wakey, there's lots to do today." And so they went about their chores again. Join me again this time. Are you ready? First, they scrubbed the floors. Then they dusted from high to low. La-dee-dee, la-dee-da. Then they chopped the wood. They swept the chimney. Then they polished the furniture. They washed the dishes. Splish, splash, splish, splash, splish, splash. And finally, they cleaned the toilets. Again, they had worked so long all day that when they got into their beds, they fell fast asleep. This happened day after day after day. And the days rolled into weeks, and things carried on like this, with the woman making them work incredibly hard, until the children were absolutely fed up. They knew they had to escape. So, that night, they waited until midnight and got quietly out of bed. Now, I need you to do this bit with me. I want you to be Hansel and Gretel again. We're going to put on our winter clothing, ready for our escape. Are you ready to go? Let's do it. Remember, quietly. First, they put on their coat. Get your arms in. Good. Then they zipped up the coat. Zip. Great. Then they put on their scarves. And finally put on their hat. Whoop. Then they were ready for their escape. As Hansel and Gretel crept quietly out of the house, they noticed a book called How to Cook and Eat Children. She was going to eat them. Suddenly, the woman appeared. "What are you doing? I'm going to cook and eat you for breakfast." Hansel and Gretel had to think quick. Gretel had an idea. She opened the oven door, reached inside to show that she couldn't fit in. This made the woman angry. She shoved Gretel out of the way, clambered into the oven to prove that it was doable. Quickly, Hansel kicked the oven door closed and locked it. The woman beat on the door, but it was too late.
Oh, it was horrible.
Soon there was nothing left of the woman, and the gingerbread house faded away, back to its original stone and wood. Green grass began to grow from the ground, and green leaves curled from the branches, and fruit burst from the bushes. The forest was coming back to life. There had been a curse laid upon the land, but now that the witch was gone, there was food for everybody. But what happened to Hansel and Gretel next? Well, they didn't know how to get home. I think they saw the beautiful bird again, pecking at something on the ground. It could have been the breadcrumbs from when Hansel ate his bread crust. That's a tale for another time. Or maybe you could tell it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.